diversity is the goal, right? We want to have a diverse workforce. Typically organizations want to diversify their types of employees, and the goal is to just have a different set of individuals within their headcount.
Hello and welcome to the Plumm Pod, where we talk about all things HR and mental health. I'm your host, Georgia, and today I am joined by Maria Balogun. On today's episode, we talk about Maria's extensive career, 17 years in industry, and we focus on the topic of the true meaning of inclusion. Maria shares some incredible practical tips and some real life stories. You're going to love this one. Maria, hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm looking forward to just carrying on our conversation that we had previously. So we have met in person.
Yep.
We had an incredible conversation, and that was why I asked you again to be a guest for us here at the Plumm Pod. And for our listeners who haven't had the pleasure of meeting you in person, I've got a question that I ask every single guest.
Right.
The question is, was HR part of the plan, or did it happen by chance?
Well, let me start by saying thank you for having me again. It's really lovely to see you again and just to be a part of this pod. So thank you. In terms of my plans and my goals, when I was a lot younger, I did consider teaching. Mm-hmm. And then as a student at school, I started to change my mind. And ultimately that was because I just felt like, I want to put my all into something, but do I want to put my all into something where people may not really be that receptive or may not want to be there? And I did feel like my strengths were in reaching out to people, supporting their development and things like that. And that was from a very young age. And I looked into different career paths, looked at some of my mentors and what they were doing. And, HR was a career that was out there and quite a few people were pursuing. And, based on my age, it was called personnel back then. So I looked into it and I felt like, okay, this is definitely something I wanted to do. So I intentionally, went and studied sociology at university and equally went on to study law as well, just to support my, educational development, understand a bit more about people because, we're not all monolithic. We are all individuals. So it's important to actually have an understanding of society and different individuals. So sociology helped me with that. And the law side of it obviously helped me with the compliance side of HR. So, it all sort of manifested, came together. I did my master's in HR and, that's all where it started from.
And then we're sat here today.
Exactly.
I actually really resonate with your story because, well, from my perspective, I actually didn't know that HR was a thing when I started out my career, but I also went to university and I studied criminology. And I found that studying criminology has helped me so much in my career. So I don't have the traditional background of studying HR, like I didn't do a master's or anything like that. I literally got my BA in criminology and landed my first HR job, kind of fell into it. So I completely agree. I think studying another subject
100%
has given me such a reward with being an HR professional.
100%.
So let's talk about inclusion, specifically the true meaning of inclusion in the workplace. From your perspective, what is the difference between diversity and then inclusion?
Sure. So in terms of diversity, I will start by saying diversity is the goal, right? We want to have a diverse workforce. Typically organizations want to diversify their types of employees, and the goal is to just have a different set of individuals within their headcount. And that ultimately tends to be the goal. Whereas I think where you take DEI a bit further is to look at equity. Equity is, ensuring that every employee who comes from these diverse backgrounds, they have the right opportunities, that the processes and procedures are set up for their success. So it's equitable, right? And then you have the inclusion side. The inclusion side is, okay, Are they welcome to be themselves? Are they actually allowed to enjoy the things that everybody else enjoys within an organization? Are they included in the wider, social norms within that business as well? So I like to use the analogy of a party. I'm sure you've probably heard it before. So diversity is the invite. Everyone gets invited to the party. Equity is ensuring that everybody that comes to the party has access to the same things when they're there. And then the inclusion part is, they are allowed to dance. And if you take it even further, the belonging side of that is that those that are allowed to dance can do so without worrying about anybody watching them. So I like to use that analogy for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, just to make people understand the true depth of what it truly means. So, yeah.
I haven't heard of that. As you were talking, I was thinking, oh my God.
Yes.
That's literally such a perfect analogy.
It is.
For that I think we can all really connect to as
100%.
well. You spoke around belonging.
Yeah.
Have you noticed anything around belonging being quite a buzzword or fluffy from the perspective of wanting? I think the angle that I sometimes hear it from is that fluffy, like it's like a nice to have.
Yeah.
When I disagree, my personal opinion, I do think it's very important for belonging. But is it hard to get people on side for the understanding of belonging when they have that opinion of it?
Oh, yes, 100%. I think belonging is about self, to be fair. And I don't think there's that much, for example, a CEO can do to make an employee feel like they belong. I think that the only thing that leadership, HR, etc., can do is to ensure that they put the right things in place to include everybody, but belonging's about you. Like, do I feel like I belong in this organization? Do I feel like I can bring my true self to this organization? Do I feel like this organization celebrates who I am? That's more about the belonging side of things. And I think the onus on organizations is that they need to ensure that they enable an environment where people feel like they can belong and also that they are included. Because that, I think, the first three parts of DEI to me are the most important. And that, I think, is where the responsibility lays in the hands of an organization. The belonging part is me, so now I'm here, they've done this, they've done that. Do I feel like I belong? And the reason why I think you say it's fluffy is because you can't quantify it. And it's very difficult for you to say, okay, what's the strategy we can do that will make people feel like they belong? I mean, it's very fluffy and it's very hard to say, okay, this is actually tried and tested and it's worked, you know?
Do you have any examples of the enablement that you just started to talk about then that organisations can put in place?
100%. I think, for example, I've worked in places where they haven't ever heard of employee resource groups, for example. And I think that employee resource groups are really, really important when you're looking at the whole DEI strategy, because if you don't have if you don't have groups where people feel like, they are a part of that group, where they share commonalities, they share, similar demographics as well. I think that type of environment allows individuals to feel like they belong within an organization because they're part of a smaller group. So things like ERGs, enabling the success of ERGs, for example, even giving them budget for events and, nurturing them by having, an executive sponsor, for example. The things like that can ensure that, employees feel like they belong because they see themselves within others. And I remember working somewhere and joining one of the Black ERGs, and I was probably one of two women of colour in the UK. But once I joined the ERG, I saw loads because they were based in the US, South Africa, and other locations around the world. And it was just a nice to have, whereas maybe we weren't a part of the whole organization and felt like, we were the majority. But within that small group, within that business, I definitely felt like, okay, great, this is a group for us.
So many thoughts are going through my mind and so many questions. And I'm just thinking from an employee's perspective, how did you feel being part of that group and having like-minded people?
Yeah.
as well that you could really get that sense of belonging with?
Yeah. I loved it. I really enjoyed being a part of the Black ERGs. But if I'm going to be honest, I do think there's a conflict of interest because of my job.
Tell me more.
Yes. So from the HR perspective, it's very challenging because, you know, there are times, for example, when they want to see stats.
Yeah.
And I have access to everything in my role, but I have to be quiet on the call. Or there are times when they're like, you know, what are we doing to improve diversity in recruitment? And I know that, you know, I know what we're really doing, but I know what's being said. So there are challenges in those ways. And I do often find, you know, that I can't really take on leadership roles within ERGs just because of that battle that I face. So what I try to do as a HR leader is to support them in another way. And that is by training them on how to be good leaders within the ERG and trying to separate the two without actually putting myself in that position. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And as an HR professional, we do get privy to certain information.
Yes.
And I completely agree.
Yes.
Talking about ERG groups, how can companies tell if they're actually implementing intentional strategies or whether they're just ticking a box?
I think there's a lot of things that just tick a box, to be fair. 100%. And especially within the DEI topic, it's definitely a strategy that I think with it around 2020 to probably around 2023, it was a huge buzzword. And I think that was like during COVID and, you know, when the Black Lives Matter movement became a bit more prevalent because of the death of and murder of George Floyd. So it was a buzzword and it was going around a lot of organizations. And I remember at the time having to help support the CEO in writing a speech for our business. And that was because we wanted to show that we were committed to Black Lives Matter, you know, but in the back of my mind, I was thinking there's so much more we need to do rather than just showing that we are part of the movement.
And being reactionary.
Exactly. Why not actually look at some of the things that we have in-house and work on those so that the employees that you actually have feel like they belong and they can belong, because there's so much more we can do rather than just proving externally to those who don't know the nitty-gritty of our business that we support Black Lives Matter. Let's actually do it.
It's the reaction piece. I think also there was a lot of companies who were very reactive at that particular point, whereas if companies actually were more proactive, they would see the most incredible
100%
results.
100%.
And there's actually a statistic, I'm going to read this just so that I get it correct. So companies with inclusive workplaces are 1.7 times more likely to be innovative leaders in the industry.
Yep, I've seen that one as well. 100% true.
Which is absolutely astonishing that so many employers are not taking that on board.
No.
Because when we do, there are such incredible ripple effects. So we get in front of our competitors, we retain the best talent, attract the best talent.
Yes.
Which is then particularly hard, and I'm so glad we're having the conversation of why is that not happening? And that's an answer we won't be able to give. But I also think, so at the moment, given the time of this podcast, there's a lot happening overseas with DEI and large organisations retracting on their programmes and things like that. Have you noticed any shifts in the UK?
At the moment, no. But I do foresee it coming, because I do typically think that the UK does like to, you know, copy the US in some ways. It's almost like they're the pioneers, they lead the way, and then we do it a little bit after. Similar to Black History Month, they already had it, you know, similar to, you know, the whole DEI strategy itself. It all came from the United States. So I do foresee it happening in the future, but I really hope it doesn't, because I think whilst it can be performative or it can be fluffy, the fact that you have it as your priority, to me, is a step in the right direction and what companies need to have. I really do.
I completely agree. One of the best pieces of advice I actually got through my career was watch what's happening in the States, because more often than not in the UK, we do follow suit.
Yes.
And I completely agree with your point in that I really hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
These large organisations are making a decision on their programmes. And I do really hope that that doesn't happen. However, I guess time will tell.
Yeah.
Let's talk about culture fit. So when we last spoke,
Yes.
this was a hot topic that you and I were talking about that I want to bring forth to the pod. So when you hear the term culture fit, from your perspective, what do you first think of?
First of all, the hairs raise on my arms. But for me personally, I think culture fit is it is the most, what's the right word to put it? I'm trying to be politically correct here. But I think it is definitely a form of regression in the DEI field, because, you know, based on that quote that you just said, actually hiring for culture fit is the exact opposite.
Agreed.
In achieving that statistic. Because if you want the culture fit, we can break that down for you, because what is your culture, you know, and what is the fit that you want that person to assign to? So if we want, we can break it down. But if you actually hire for culture fit, all you're going to be doing is hiring people who are like us, you know.
Yes.
You're hiring people who have similarities with you. There's that affinity that a lot of leaders want when they're hiring. You know, they will ask questions in interviews, for example, like, you know, tell us about yourself. And in that question, what someone who's hiring is looking for are similarities. Okay, they went to university, tick. They did this, tick. Okay, she's got her master's in HR, tick. You know, and those are things that you think are aligned to the job role, but actually no, it's more aligned to their backgrounds or aligned to their idea of what the ideal fit should be. So that question, as lovely as it may be, the purpose behind it in asking sometimes is about culture fit. So I think it's a bit of a counterproductive ideology, in my opinion.
I'm definitely seeing the phrase a lot as
Yes.
well, and people referring to it. And I take the same stance as you. In my opinion, it basically saying I want to hire the same people who look like us, think like us.
Yep.
And I do not see how that is beneficial in any way. We should be hiring people who can add to our culture, not people who are already the same. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree. There are a lot of things wrong
Yes.
with that phrase, but I think there are also people who are jumping onto it
Yeah.
and talking about it as well.
It's a buzzword for a
It
lot
is.
of organizations. It's something that they think is, I don't know, revolutionary in a sense, because 10 years ago, I don't think I ever heard the word culture fit. I'm sure you didn't as well. And now it's like, okay, we need to do the culture fit part of the interview. Or if you're going through an interview process, they will say to you, you're going to have the competency part of the interview, then you're going to meet someone who's a part of the team, just to see if you match the culture for culture fit. And it is a bit concerning for me. And I think, like you, what organizations need to focus on more is culture add, because actually if I fit, then you already have me. So what's the point of hiring me if you already have 15 other Marias who think the same, who are going to go to a meeting and all nod and agree? Actually, what you should be looking for is someone who can actually bring a diverse mix to the fold, come to that meeting and say, actually, have we ever thought about doing it this way? Because diversity of thought, like you said, is important. Diversity of, experience is important as well. So are you just hiring people from FS backgrounds? Great. Then they're all going to have the FS mindset. But actually, if you mix it up a little bit, that diverse background can really do wonders for an organization and make you think in ways that you actually haven't considered. So I think culture add should be the focus instead.
What practical tips for any hiring managers would you advise, rather than focusing on culture fit, shifting more towards actual impact?
Yes. Oh, some of the tips I would say, what are your essentials? What are the essential criteria that you have for that role specifically? And I think they should be focused on experience. They should be focused on education, if that's one of the requirements. I think it should be focused on delivery and what impact they've brought to the role previously, rather than things like, how would you respond to this? And you're trying to work out whether or not they fit within your values framework or your culture. I do think value add is very important as well, and whether or not someone aligns to your values, great. But the question is, are your values right? So I guess that's another conversation as well. But I definitely think focusing on the essential criteria and making them factual is I think it's not revolutionary. It's sort of the basics when you're hiring, right? And it shouldn't be about a gut feeling about someone, or, not thinking they're the right fit for my team. Actually, can this person add value to my team in their own unique way? Can they do the job, first and foremost? Is this person coming in with unique experience that can add a mix to my team? Is this person going to want to stay in my team as well, and within this organization? Those are questions that you should ask. I don't think focusing on whether or not I think this person will get along with people in the business is a criteria, because maybe they won't. But will they add impact in their own unique way? Absolutely. Will they bring 5 other people who are like them into the business in the future? Maybe as well. And they will fit in with them. So it doesn't have to be about the present. It doesn't have to be about your idea of what's right or what's the right fit. It should be more about what value can this person bring to my team, and can they do the job? Because 9 out of 10 times they can, and your gut feeling really doesn't matter.
Do you find that there needs to be an education piece there, though, with hiring managers in that transition and that shift? Because I actually see that a lot as well, where stage 1, after we've done all the CV vetting and shortlisting, stage 1 is that good old culture fit interview, where hiring managers are so fixated on their internal values that may not have been revisited for a really long time, and they're holding people to those values. Whereas the reality, you're absolutely right. They should be looking for the right person who's going to create an impact to the organization. So talking about that and managers and the skills gap, how can we enable them in their interviewing process to be more mindful and more inclusive?
There are a few things. I think first and foremost, and people may think it's a bit monotonous and a bit repetitive, I do think there's a need for every single hiring manager to have unconscious bias training. Because I think once you're aware of your biases, which happen to be unconscious, we all have them, and sharing with hiring managers that it's not wrong to have them, but actually the wrong part of it, the part that doesn't work, is actually using it to make business decisions. So I think the first part is making sure that they're aware of what their biases are, because actually as soon as you're aware, then you can sort of stop yourself, because you're like, okay, right, I like this person because he went to my university. You're aware of your affinity, or recency bias. I like this candidate because we saw him only yesterday. So there are biases that we all have, and that creep up into these decision making processes. So I think by starting with having unconscious bias training, I think that's the first step. There shouldn't be any person interviewing candidates externally, internally, or making business decisions for employees who has not had unconscious bias training. Alongside that, I think that there are hiring essentials trainings that every organization should have. This should be led by a talent acquisition team, which, they should have a hiring strategy, and it should align to the organizational goals. I think within that process, there's a need for a very good ATS. That's the dream a lot of organizations want to have. But I think within a good ATS, within that good ATS, what happens is that every single stage of the interview should really be detailed, and there should be feedback from every single person who has interviewed the candidate. As part of the ATS, they're able to track and then make an informed business decision. I think within every single hiring decision, it should not just be one veto decision. The decision should not just be the hiring manager's choice. I think if you have a panel of people, there's a reason why you have that panel, and you in your initial conversation with talent acquisition, that's where the hiring manager should say, alongside their TA specialist, okay, I want to add X, Y, and Z to the process. Let's say it's 3 stages. Within those 3 stages, at the end of it, you go back to your TA specialist and you're able to make a decision based on the feedback you got from the ATS and based on the feedback that every single person who supported you with the hiring process has made. And I think in that way, you're able to make more of an informed and fair decision on the hiring. But the training side of it, I think, is the most important. Just giving managers an understanding of what the goal is of hiring. Hiring is not just a tick box exercise because, we have to, make this product, we have to hit this goal, we have to do this, so I need headcount. And you're literally just ticking it off. With, rushing and, making hiring a ticking box exercise ultimately leads to poor decisions. And within those poor decisions, you're likely to make decisions that are not as fair as they would if you actually took time or actually reinvented the wheel and made the process a lot smarter. So I always say a good ATS helps with hiring decisions, but at the forefront and at the base of it should be core training before anyone's allowed to actually make hiring decisions.
There's one word that just stuck in my head from what you said, time.
Yes.
We should not be rushing hiring decisions. That's when serious mistakes happen. We see that then in our culture, in our team impact, our figures, our data, all things like that. And I'm incredibly conscious. I see it time and time again where those rushed hires are made.
Oh, yes.
Fair few of those.
Yes. Can I add to that though?
Go on.
I also think if you flip time as well, on the other side, sometimes if you take too long as well, you lose good candidates. So I remember a while ago looking for a permanent role and, got through the first stage, which was with a TA specialist. And then he said, I'm going to send you an email, Maria, with the next stages. And I said, okay, no worries. The email was like 2 pages long. Because there were 11 stages in the interview.
Oh my goodness.
And I sent a lovely email back saying I would not like to move forward in the process because I felt like that shows a lot about the fundamentals of this organization. Because number one, who's going to make the overall decision if I have 11 stages? Number two, who has that type of time? Not me. Number 3 as well, I felt like your decision-making process in your business must be flawed because you need 11 stages to decide whether or not someone is going to lead your EMEA HR. I felt like it was too much. And in that sense, it's almost like, why do you need so many people to help you make one decision? So yes, time rushing is, not good. But at the same time, taking 3 months to make a hiring decision also shows a lack of strategy and a lack of actual overall decision making, in my opinion, as well.
There's a balance. You've got to find a balance in between. And 11 stages, that is the most I've ever heard.
11 stages, 11. I promise you. And, the president didn't do 11 stages to become the president.
Wow.
So why do I need to do 11 stages?
It also makes me think around inclusion, because I know that's what we're talking about today, but 11 stages, I don't think that's actually an inclusive hiring process.
Of course not.
You're asking for so much time.
Without,
which may not be possible.
No, it's not. It's terrible. It's almost like you're committing to a project before you even have the job. So it's just too much. And I also think the emotion that comes with hiring and going through recruitment processes, it's a lot of stress on someone.
Agreed.
So to have to go through 11 stages is a commitment that I wasn't willing to make. And I hope that the email I sent them, which was really nice, and it was more probably a bit patronizing because it's coming from a HR person, but it was more about, maybe revise your strategy because, I would have done it if there was 5 stages maybe, but 11 I think is a bit extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask one last question.
Of course.
Looking back on your career, and I wish we could keep talking, but I'm conscious. Looking back on your career, what is one piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
Do you know, I would say to my younger self that you deserve to be where you are. and that you deserve to be in those rooms, and that you shouldn't feel like you need to hide yourself. You don't need to, be small to make others feel big, and you don't need to quieten your voice so that others can be heard. I had a really good CPO in one of my previous places, and she told me about a lady who was the chief marketing officer at Netflix. Her name's Bose. I don't know if you watch Housewives of Beverly Hills. Very good show. But she's now on Housewives of Beverly Hills. And she said to me, because I mentioned to her in a meeting that I had just jumped off a call, and for the first half an hour of the call, everybody was talking about my hair. Yes, because it was different to how they were used to seeing me. And she said to me, Maria, you need to change your hair more often. And she said to me, don't feel like you need... And I said to her, it was so annoying because now I feel like I just don't ever want to change my hair anymore, because why is it a topic of conversation? I'm a black female. We change our hair every day. We look different. We look different all the time. And rather than celebrating it or just highlighting it and making me feel uncomfortable on the call, I would just rather get on with business, because that's what we're there to do. And she said to me, go and look up this person called Bose. And I went and looked her up, and she had massive hair, beautiful makeup. She was like literally her true self, and like brought her true self to every meeting. And she said, Maria, this woman is a successful chief marketing officer at Netflix. You can be whatever you want to be by being yourself. So don't feel like you need to only wear the hairstyle that everybody's used to seeing. Next time that it happens, just try to shut the conversation down and move on to business as usual. And I will tell my younger self that it's okay to be me. It's okay to show up wearing your bright colors. It's okay to have your hair curled or have it short the next day. And it's okay to have a different opinion, because I've had to, in the past feel like I should be quiet and quieten my voice in situations, because I didn't want to stand out, because I feel like I do anyway. Naturally I stand out in a room, because typically I always use this phrase, I'm always the only. Like, I go to networking events. I literally just got back from one on Tuesday. And again, I was the only black female there, and there were maybe 70 other female professionals, but it was just me. And in meetings, in leadership sessions, it's typically just me. So I feel like I stand out in the room anyway. So I don't want to be the person with the biggest opinion, or the person who goes against what everybody else is saying. Yes, we all really like this idea, and I'm like, wow. Why don't we think about it this way? So I would tell my younger voice that it's okay to do that, and that's what makes you you. And the right organization, the right place will celebrate that, and they will want you to do that, because that's why you're in that room. So that's what I would tell younger Maria. Be yourself, be bold, be bright, and don't let anyone quieten your voice.
I've got goosebumps. I know you said them earlier, but oh my God, that is such a powerful message. And don't feel like you have to conform. Be bold, be yourself.
Yes.
And you're right, the right people will celebrate you.
Yes.
Such an important message to end on. And thank you so much for being my guest today. I absolutely love this.
Thank you, Georgia. Appreciate it.